action, we're going to dive into some of the nitty-gritty of municipal government. What is it? How does it work? And I think this is important because we want to kind of lay a foundation of knowledge that will really help you for when it comes time to collect data for the National Climate League. So a municipality, and we can go back maybe one slide, Abby. Not that it really matters, but a municipality can be a large urban center, a city, a town, a township, a village, or a rural area. So it covers a wide range of different types of communities. Every municipality is governed by an elected government, and these are some of the areas that a municipal government is responsible for. Now we can do that list, Abby. Um, Municipalities are governed by democratically elected councils made up of residents, which is kind of cool because unlike provincial and federal politicians, councillors generally run as individuals who are residents of the community rather than a member of a party. Besides the mayor and councillors, municipalities also have staff who are responsible for providing advice to council, implementing council's decisions, and providing services. We talked about how we've set up, I think, like why the local level is important for climate action and an important role that they can play. But there's also, of course, challenges that municipal governments face when it comes to climate action. So one of them, and we can go to the next slide. This shows, yeah, that one. This shows how different pieces of climate action or climate activities such as reducing waste or zero carbon housing, public plentiful accessible green space. This shows how that connects to some of the traditional areas that municipalities are responsible for. And municipalities have, of course, long had sustainability departments, which are responsible for some of these things, especially waste management. But as we all know, climate touches on almost like every aspect of our lives and almost every aspect of government. And municipalities haven't traditionally had climate action departments. Lots of them are building these new structures now, which is really exciting to see. But many of them are still kind of figuring out how to tailor their structure, whether it's through the sustainability department or by building a new department. How do they tailor that and fit that to match the like diverse range of actions that needs to happen if we are to tackle climate change? So that's one challenge, I guess, to be aware of when it comes to municipal climate action. The second one is really around provincial control. Municipalities are creations of the province, and the province is basically responsible for giving municipalities, for empowering them and designating what municipalities can or can't do. And so as I said, live in Winnipeg in Manitoba. And some of you might also live in provinces that have, well, now we have a new government in Manitoba, which is exciting. But lots of you joining today, I'm sure, live in provinces that are perhaps like less than forward thinking when it comes to climate. And so that can create a lot of frustration for municipalities and municipal governments that might be more forward thinking and wanting to do more things, but are constrained by a province that isn't supportive in allowing them doing those things. On the other hand, a province such as BC, for example, can really set up a lot of enabling structures and create that kind of overarching programs or legislation or policies that really help municipalities that give them kind of a pathway or framework for acting on climate. So BC's Building Step Code is a good example of that. Lastly, another challenge around municipal climate action is that municipal government's revenue is largely raised from property taxes as well as grants from provincial territorial governments or also the federal government. So that means that they're kind of limited in terms of the funding that they have, and they often must work in partnership, whether it's working with the private sector or again with other levels of government in order to get things done. So with that, we'll go to the next slide and talk about how do municipal governments actually get things done. Here we have kind of three of the main, I guess, actors that have a role to play with municipal decision making. You can think of it as a back and forth in between all three of these, really. So obviously, residents are responsible for voting councillors into council, as well as the mayor. And they provide also public input at various stages and on various matters. Council is responsible for making decisions via resolutions, bylaws, or policies, and they can only pass these decisions at meetings that are open to the public. So again, there's a level of public accountability there. These decisions then shape and set in motion the programs, services, and projects that are delivered by the staff or the administrative side of the municipality. A few other things that council is responsible for are setting the budget, which is obviously very important in terms of determining what kind of things from the climate plan, for example, actually get funded and actually get implemented. And yeah, on that, municipal governments develop climate plans to guide their actions on climate. These are often developed by the staff in collaboration, sometimes with external consultants. And these plans establish baseline data, such as emissions data. They set targets and goals, like a net zero by 2050 goal. And they also identify possible actions within municipal jurisdiction, so something that the municipality actually has control over to meet each of these goals. But implementation of the plan is dependent on turning these actions into, as I said, actual bylaws or policy programs, services and projects, as well as on the municipality being able to acquire, as well as choosing to allocate adequate funding and staff time to these actions. So that's a quick, very brief, high-level crash course in municipalities. And we're going to go now to talk about what the NCL kind of tracks around municipal climate action. So if you were a person, which maybe some of you are, who is interested in local climate action, you might be aware that your municipality does have a climate plan, and you know that they're doing like some things on climate, but it can be really tricky to understand whether their plan is adequate, as well as what is actually being implemented from that plan. So that's where the NCL comes in. We've listed here on this slide some of, I guess, like the themes that the NCL stands for: transparency and public accountability, as well as fostering public participation and climate policy literacy. The NCL is really about doing a deep dive into municipalities' climate plans and comparing their climate commitments to their actual actions, as well as comparing municipalities' actions to each other. We want to help people understand, where is your municipality actually maybe taking really good action that's far-reaching and comprehensive, and certainly there are many cities and towns that are doing really exciting things. But we also want to help people understand, where are there gaps? Where is your municipality not following through on its climate commitments, or where is it falling behind compared to what other cities of a similar size or context are doing? Besides actually acting on climate, we think that municipalities also have a real responsibility to be transparent about what they're doing. So we think they should be tracking their progress, and they should be sharing this back with the community always. Fostering this kind of data transparency is really important for creating a public that is policy literate and well-informed, and equipped with the knowledge that they need in order to participate in local decision-making around climate. And there's lots of ways that municipalities do this, such as open data portals that we're seeing more and more kind of use that include climate action data. But there's still a lot of room for improvement. Next slide, please, Abby. Oh, and next slide again. So these are the main areas that the NCL tracks. I'll go through those in a second, but when we're thinking about the NCL, one way that I like to describe it is kind of like the climate policy version of citizen science. So if people are familiar with citizen science, this is where uh, people might organize themselves in order to go out and help with monitoring bird or butterfly populations and helping with counts for those animal populations. And the National Climate League is kind of like this, but instead it's about monitoring green space, for example, or retrofit programs. We have developed a set of 19 questions to guide you in examining your municipality's plans, targets, policies, and outcomes across 5 key areas of local climate action that you can see listed on the side there. And because I think that we're doing pretty good for time, I think I'm going to share my screen here. Abby, you can stop the slideshow for a second. So the questions that we look at include things like reporting basically simply what are the city's climate targets, what is the data from their last greenhouse gas inventory, how often do they conduct a greenhouse gas inventory? Bear with me while I bring this up. This is the question guide that we've developed to help you. And this is the question list for this year. If you have participated in the NCL before, I was going to add as a note because I know that some of you have, as this is a project Climate Reality has done for a few years. You'll notice that these are a little bit different, and we have expanded them to include a lot more kind of policies and targets, but we'll still be collecting some of the quantitative data too. So you can see under buildings, we track things like, does the city have a green building standard, which sets some requirements for energy efficiency for new buildings in the city? Have they implemented any kind of fossil fuel ban? I think I saw recently that Montreal was the most recent city to pass something saying that buildings hooked up to fossil fuels cannot be built after a certain date. Does the city have its own retrofit program, which supports local homeowners to do retrofits for energy efficiency or installing things like solar panels? Yeah. And if anybody has questions about these, we can go. I'm happy to answer them in more detail. Let's go back to the slide, Abby. And if people have questions, I'm not looking at the chat currently, but then there'll be time for lots of questions at the end in which so feel free to drop them in the chat for now or just hold them until the end and we'll discuss. So yes, so we have 19 questions across those areas that are basically asking you to describe a little bit about what does their climate plan look like, do they have this set of plans or targets, etc. We also have 4 case study questions, which are optional, but we want to give people an opportunity if, while you're doing this research and you come across a really inspiring example of what your municipality is doing on one of these key areas like affordable, sustainable housing, sustainable transportation, renewable energy, or biodiversity, then we want to give you an opportunity to report it. So the case studies, there are 4 case study questions as well. The volunteer guide that I just showed briefly gives you kind of a step-by-step guide on how to find data, as well like the sources that you might want to consult. So basically, it includes looking at municipal climate plans, other pages on the municipal website, perhaps some news articles for especially things that are really new and emerging. And then you submit your findings into our database. The end result of this is publishing these into a report, which should be ready around the beginning of summer next year. And this will provide that kind of bird's eye analysis where we are able to compare municipalities to each other, as well as show highlights from some of the municipalities that emerged as kind of as leaders. So next slide. What does this actually look like? These are our timelines. So data collection is running from now until the beginning of February. And then there'll be a period in which we're sending the data to municipal staff, and we'll be wanting some volunteer help with that. And municipal staff will fill in the gaps for data that we're not able to find, as well as provide some verifications over the course of the month of February. And then the rest of kind of spring is spent working with this data, doing some analysis, adding that quantitative data collection where we'll be collecting on some of the NCL indicators from last year if you participated last year. And yeah, as I said, aiming for the report to be released in early summer. And as well as data collection, there's lots of opportunities for volunteers to be involved with that quantitative data collection, the writing and analysis that it says there. But we won't be getting started on that until later in February or March. But if that is something that interests you as well, then definitely stay tuned for that. What else should I say? We encourage everybody to collect data for the municipality where they live because it's really about understanding the place that you are based more. If you would like to work with another person, that's certainly possible. We might pair some people up if we get people who are interested in collecting for the same place. If you're open to being assigned a different municipality, if, for example, we have a ton of people who want to do Vancouver or somewhere like that, then that is helpful as well if you are willing to work on a different one. My estimation is that collecting data takes about 10 to 12 hours of research time total to do one municipality. Again, that 10 to 12 hours can be spread over the course of like the next couple months. We also usually have some group data collection sessions where we all get on a Zoom and do some data together or data collection together in order to kind of collaborate and answer questions as well. We'll also have a Slack for keeping in touch with people. Yeah, I think that's it. If people have questions, then we can go to those in a moment. Basically, the next step here is if you decide that you would like to participate, then you can fill out the registration form and we'll share a link to that in a moment. And from there, you will receive the volunteer package, which I showed you a brief glimpse at a moment ago, and it has all the information that you need in order to actually start collecting data. And we'll also be getting started with, I'll reach out to you with details about joining the volunteer Slack, as well as those group data collection sessions. But really, this is something that you can do very independently and on your own. Or you can work with a small group of people if there's some people that you want to work with in your municipality. Yeah, it's up to you. So I'm just going to see how the French group is doing. Okay, great. And if anybody has any questions, then I guess now is the time. I'm scrolling back in the chat, but feel free to just raise your hand or else unmute and jump in if you have a question. Yeah, Laura Meyer says, I live in one of those provinces. I assume that was when we were talking about the some of the disconnect in between provincial and municipal climate action. And yes, I can
Yes, that's what I was
resonate
talking
with
about.
that, Laura.
Yeah.
I will say, I guess expanding on that, like the NCL used to really emphasize comparison across different municipalities and try to kind of rank municipalities in terms of like who is leading on this indicator. And that was when we looked at more quantitative data. But one of the challenges I guess like there is a real challenge in drawing that kind of fair comparison when there is such a difference in between different provinces. And so part of the reason why we have moved towards, I think, more of this descriptive model where I hope and I expect that we'll still be able to present some kind of rankings of quantitative data and really be able to identify who is leading. But it will also, I think, help us be a little bit more fair in our comparisons, because we don't want to penalize a municipality for um, that is trying to do a lot, but happens to have a provincial government that is just not really enabling or cooperating with them. Um, okay, questions in the chat. Oh yes, well, Jaden, I think I was answering your question just now around what are the changes that we've introduced and why. Yeah, I'm really excited. I think that it will also be perhaps a more in-depth learning experience than it has been before. But again, if you've participated in the NCL before and you really liked the collecting data on those quantitative indicators, then there'll definitely be opportunities to help out with that again too, just not till the spring. Um, can volunteers collect data for any municipality or just the ones provided? Yes, basically, as I said, we want volunteers to be able to collect for the place where they're based. So it is open to any municipality. We also have a rough list of municipalities that we'd like to make sure that we have someone collect for. So that includes, basically all of the capitals and the major cities in each province. As well as making sure that we get a little bit of a range in between from large cities to medium to smaller sized cities as well. But yes, so the answer is you can collect data for any municipality, but if you would like to be assigned a municipality, then that is definitely something that can happen as well. Great. I'm still, I think, waiting for the French group to come back, although I heard that they are almost done.
So Esther said in the chat that they missed how to access the volunteer package. So we are going to post a link soon in the chat to the volunteer registration form. So if you do sign up for that, you will be sent the volunteer package. Is that right, Hannah?
Yeah, that's right. Do you want to share the link to the registration form now?
Yeah, I can do that now.
So feel free to either sign up or to think about it. If anybody has any questions or if you would like to reach out to me afterwards, I will also put my email in the chat here now. If anybody has any questions about some of the specific um, questions that we looked at, I know I just showed them very briefly, but I'm happy to go into that in more detail too. Um, yes, the answer again to Esther's question about accessing the volunteer package is to fill out the volunteer registration form. And we'll also be asking you there as part of that form which municipality you're interested in collecting data for. So you can either, if you have one, if you know you definitely want to collect for the place that you live, then you can fill that out. If you're easy to being assigned one, then you can let us know there too. I will say perhaps a couple other things is that we are doing another one of these training and onboarding sessions next week. So if you have anybody that you know might be interested, who wasn't able to make this one, I know being in the middle of the day is hard for some people. So that one is going to be in the evening. So please tell people about that. Also, we are doing something kind of cool this year that we haven't done before, which is we're hosting a webinar in a couple of weeks in collaboration with a nonprofit called Open North. And they're a really cool organization that basically works with municipal governments on how to manage their data, not just climate related data, but all sorts, although they do have kind of a social justice and climate related focus. And they work with municipal governments basically on um, everything from kind of identifying what kind of data do municipalities need to track, what are their kind of management strategies around that, how do they make sure that it's open and accessible to people. And so we'll be doing a webinar with them in exactly 2 weeks on the 23rd, and Abby has just dropped the link to that, so thank you. We'll be doing a webinar with them that's going to cover some questions like that, learning about what does municipal climate data look like, as well as what are perhaps some things that are important for climate action and important pieces of data that perhaps municipalities don't tend to collect, especially things that have kind of a social justice lens. So for example, like when it comes to adaptation planning, like how do we understand the effects that climate impacts might have on houseless populations? And how do we collect that data in kind of a non hierarchical or non top-down way, but in order to inform our climate or adaptation planning and how we keep everybody safe. So that should be a cool session. I think that it's a really good complement to participating in the MCL in terms of giving you like a further grounding and basis um, in in municipal climate data and municipal climate action. But it's also not, it's by no means really a mandatory training, but could be a good complement. Cool. Does anybody have any more questions? No. Okay. Well, we're still waiting for the French group to come back, so I think we're going to leave this session open for now. But if you want to head out, then you're welcome to do that. And please make sure that if you are interested in participating, that you save that link to the volunteer registration form or save my email if you'd like to get in touch. And yeah, we look forward to seeing people register and looking forward to working with you on this if you do decide that this is something you want to do. I think I see folks from the French group coming back now. Maybe. Hello. Hi, everybody. I hope that you had a good session. We let some of the English participants go already because we did a bit of a question session and we were waiting for you guys. So I decided it was all good. But yeah, I hope you had a good session and it sounded like you already did some questions, Jamie. Good. Okay. I just want to make sure then that people have the link to the volunteer registration form because that's really the next step. If you do want to participate, then please fill that out and I'll be in touch. We also wanted to do a little plug for this demystifying data webinar that we are co-hosting with an organization called Open North. That's in exactly 2 weeks from now, and it's not a mandatory part of training for the NCL, but I think it is encouraged because it's a really good complement. It will give you a kind of basis and grounding understanding of how municipalities work with data related to climate and adaptation planning, and what are some of kind of the community or social justice related considerations and challenges that they deal with when it comes to data. So that will be a webinar, a presentation, as well as some breakout group discussions, and I think it'll be really cool. So that's in a couple weeks, a webinar called Demystifying Data. And if people don't have further questions, then I think we can wrap it up. And we did do it in just basically an hour, like I thought we were going to. So thanks very much everybody for joining. And oh, and I'll put my email because I don't think people in the French group. If anybody would like to reach out, if you have questions that you would like to discuss beforehand, then definitely feel free to shoot me an email. Otherwise, I wish everybody a great rest of your day. And yeah, looking forward to getting started with the National Climate League. Thank you.
Merci tout le monde. Merci pour la participation francophone.
Jamie,
Ouais.
est-ce qu'on peut rester 2 minutes?
Yeah, Hannah, could you maybe co-host? I think I already am, eh?
Yeah,